Well, hi there, folks. Welcome to Audit, or Auditoration, the official podcast of the Fractal Journal. It's already been sandboxed as a vlog on YouTube. There's a link to it below here in the description on Zencast. And I really enjoy podcasting. It's fun. Right now, my microphone, my Scarlett 2IB, is broken, so you're going to have to bear with me using my S8 phone audio system because I think it's just slightly a tad better than my laptop camera here. So today I actually uploaded my last video of the sandboxing of the podcast, which was about Facebook and Wired.com. Basically, I love technology. That's one of the topics that's going to be discussed often on this podcast. And as such, I'm subscribed to Wired.com's newsletter and a variety of other geeky newsletters. And I see an article earlier about how Facebook can definitely control its algorithm. And in that article, basically the case was built that, hey, Facebook was able and willing very quickly to take down certain games like Zigna and then certain applications like Video when they got annoying for users. So why can't they get rid of political content that's questionable? Mark Zuckerberg's reply to this was something to the effect of, well, there's only a certain amount of things that we can do, and do you really want us to control that as a society, to control what people upload before they upload it as a society? And I don't think that's what you want us to do. And that's perfectly reasonable. I was surprised to hear that coming from Mark Zuckerberg because he's kind of known as being a tad bit of an Orwellian fellow. But this article right here, this Wired.com article, was very Orwellian because basically it was building the case for censorship in the style that is found in third world countries. In fact, it did point out the fact that Facebook made it possible for China and Vietnam and countries of that ilk to basically, limit what their users can do within the context of those, some would argue, repressive governments. And then it went on to say that Facebook is worried about its bottom line and that fake news is what's been bringing in revenue, and that Zuckerberg should have heeded Obama's warning during the election about fake news, which, look, you cannot, as a platform, police what people are having, the kind of dialogue they're having. Even if there is the potential for a state actor buying some kind of an advertisement, the answer is never censorship. It's always to get people discussing and to put out your own side of the story. It's incredibly cynical to just believe that people are so dumb and that elections were lost just because people were taken in and swindled by fake stories. Yes, it does happen, but the scale of this alleged incident does not seem to be that high. And the reason I feel it's important to talk about these things, why I'm doing this podcast, is because we've just got to keep on hitting on the culture of a democratic republic that is the United States, wherein how we resolve issues and how we keep things from getting out of hand is having a healthy dialogue with each other. And one of the ways we do that is we don't build these hierarchies and these pecking orders. Yes, there's some people that have expertise, but essentially we should try to make an effort to hear everybody out and to not be lazy and only listen to people that are fun to listen to. We all kind of tend to go the easiest and most fun route, but a lot of times people that can't talk very well or aren't exactly the sharpest or most accomplished tools in the shed will have some new insight to shed because they're just a fresh pair of eyes on a topic. And that, to me, is kind of the core how of a democratic republic or any good institution should function. You have your leaders, you have the hierarchy, obviously, that are the more knowledgeable sorts. So theoretically, that's supposed to be our Congress and our Senate. And then you have the populace having a healthy dialogue and then delivering potential solutions to the problems and needs that they have that are constantly changing to these folks, and then the change is affected in that manner. And I think that's totally possible, but it's stymied these days by people being drowned out by everybody trying to get on top of that sandbox and not fostering a communication wherein everybody is exchanging ideas, where there's no PC boundaries, where there's some, level of decorum. You don't want to just get into cussing fest, but if someone slips a dirty word or says something kind of unsavory, well, you've just got to let that go in the interest of keeping the conversation moving along. And you definitely do not do that by being like Wired.com and suggesting that Facebook is being this terrible thing, because it's not policing thought. I just thought that it was weird coming from a journalistic outlet, and definitely worthy of mention, because I keep seeing things like that. In fact, I titled the vlog that I made about it, Well or Well. It's a really cumbersome little play on words where, is it a well or a good thing, or is it an Orwellian thing, well or well? Yeah, I know. But, right. So, my goodness. Yes, this is kind of what the podcast is, just about absolutely everything that's going on under the sun, with special focuses on stuff I love, like music, open source software, philosophy, science, specifically kind of neuroscience and cognitive science, and that sort of jazz. I'm a big Michael Crichton fan. I'm also a writer. That's what the Fractal Journal thing, I think I mentioned it so far. I might not have. But this is the official podcast of the Fractal Journal, is about, check it out at https://thefractaljournal.com for my writings, both fiction and nonfiction. See, the whole thing about this podcast is I want to get good at talking and riffing on topics, because I'm going to be interviewing people for nonfiction books through this podcast, and it'll also help me in my writing. I think that everything informs each other. That's another kind of thing that's going to be going on. I'm going to be, as I'm learning, sharing what I'm learning about content creation of various stripes and giving it to my subscribers. I do have a Patreon. I'm going to provide the link below if anybody would like to contribute. That's definitely helpful, but I will do this absolutely free until I'm blue in the face, even at great personal cost, because not only do I enjoy it, but I find it vastly important, because I have cultivated, as you can see, I have a lot of books. I have actually read a lot of them, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about things, and I feel that it's time to give back for all of the great things that I have been able to experience in my 28 years on this here planet. Yeah. So about that break in my microphone, it's just a little USB thing on the back. It has a short in it. It's the most aggravating thing, and I'm hoping that musicians, amateur musicians who might have something similar, or podcasters, will be able to sympathize with me and get a little catharsis. That I'm, instead of using my pretty decent mic for the price, I am resorting to a phone camera audio system. Yes. So one thing, I'm talking about these books and the fact that I write, that I think is super important to do, is for us to continue a culture of reading, especially reading the news. Because here's what happens when you're listening to a podcast like this, or you're watching the news on the TV. You have the foxy ladies distracting you with that, or the handsome gentleman if you're a lady, or, what have you. Then you have, of course, the tone of voice that people use that kind of indicates what you should be thinking. And also, I think it kind of, all of that, the sexiness and the voice and the moral preening, it gets into your subconscious and blends with information, and you might be making decisions about information without having properly assessed it, just because of the way that the information is presented. Now, when you have words on a page, they're static, and you can look at them. And while you can do turns of phrase to mislead people in print, if the reader is being even only somewhat cautious, he's going to catch a lot of that. And it's also, there's something about looking at words on a page that always makes me want to continue reading more things about that. So, and then I'll connect, and just because of the place that I go mentally, all of that is very sequentially processed in not a dryly analytical way, but in a way that promotes deep learning. In fact, there's an article in Psychology Today. It's about reading fiction, but I think the same thing applies to nonfiction. Right now, because I'm writing a book about water as a resource, how we're depleting it, how we're using it, how we can use it better, I'm reading a lot of nonfiction books like Alex Perdome's The Ripple Effect, and in it there's journalism and research combined with prose that really helps you get at the root of the issue. And I think that because we live in this really nuanced world, we have to not only listen to podcasts like this, but read that information to really get it in our noggins. Because as I was saying at the beginning of this podcast, we live in a democratic republic, or even wherever you live, whatever system of government, the more that people are able to talk to each other and to people that can affect change about important topics without, getting carried away into partisan bickering, the better everything is just going to turn out. That goes for business as well. I'm at the 11-minute mark here. I'm going to try to make this about 20 minutes, but since it's my first podcast of that length and I really wanted to just try and see how well I could do, I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to be all that quality, but stick around with me. I'm just going to plow right on ahead with some things that bother me, because isn't one of the points of podcasting an informal conversation that brings you information to kind of let off some steam, and then perhaps the listener has some catharsis or gets catharsis from calling me dumb for what I'm about to say, whatever that is, which is this. It's really bizarre what's considered contributing. Literally, there was a person that basically was acting as a counselor in my life. Not like a school counselor, but somebody wiser and older. And I was talking about my projects, and I swear, I might be misremembering this because it was a number of years ago. I was talking about how water is an issue and blah, blah, blah. And something was said to the effect of, people should be trying to solve things instead of just complaining about them. And I'm thinking there, well, look, before you can solve a problem, you need to know what the problem is about. That's the whole point of the division of labor of a reporter or a writer, an information gatherer, and a scientist, bringing information together, synthesizing it, and presenting it to the public. And in the process of me learning this stuff, it's getting in my head, maybe I'll go forth and pursue geology. I don't know. I've thought about doing hydrology, but even if I don't, the point of it is it's a worthwhile endeavor to write a book, to learn about a topic, even if it's just so I can have a great conversation with people. And I do find this weird utilitarian kind of take on things, and I think it comes from the college system, honestly, because it's based on a very factory model of doing things, which, I've worked in a factory, and factories have their uses, but their uses are very specialized, and you should not extrapolate that everywhere. In fact, it's so extrapolated that we call people resources, like human resources. I was reading all kinds of business articles earlier, and there was a fellow, I think I'll try to link to the article below, I have it bookmarked somewhere, that was making the case, hey, don't call it human resources. That's pretty demeaning. I'm not a resource. I'm a human being. We're here to work together. You're not here to basically use me for whatever I'm bringing to the company, and then when I'm done. See, he was making the case that basically the language that you use kind of defines the approach you take towards people. And I think he cited some examples of how the military will do this to dehumanize the enemy by saying something to the effect of, yeah, well, that's not a person we're killing. That's a thing that made a bad decision that we had to neutralize. Yeah, sure, there is a need to defend yourself, and there might be cases that can be made for war, but at the same time, the corporate boardroom or any kind of work setting, it's not very warlike, and we should not think of people as resources. We should think of resources as resources that provide one of the most precious creatures on earth. Human beings with the capacity to live their lives, learn, grow, love each other, or fight in the UFC, if that's your thing, which I think is kind of cool. I've always enjoyed jiu-jitsu. Yeah, man. Yeah, I just there's so many great books out there. You know, we've got our Kindles now, we've got our laptops, we read on screens, but there is something very nice about just opening a book and having all these different kind of covers made with a different consistency that you can hold, and then that feel of that particular book becomes ingrained to you on the smell of it. Like, there's certain Michael Crichton paperback novels that have that, I want to say, late 90s smell to them. And just every time I open them, I get transported back to my teens and my childhood, and it's just fantastic. And I know that everybody knows this, but I want the book industry to stay alive, even though a part of me kind of mourns the trees. But I think that books are one of the most worthwhile things that we can use a tree for, you know. And here's the other thing, since I'm talking about pet peeves, you know, environmentalism. My goodness. All right, so as soon as you start talking about an environmental issue, you're suddenly an environmentalist. And I guess by definition you kind of are, but you get lobbed in with people. And I don't even understand how environmentalist became a dirty word. I don't necessarily consider myself an environmentalist because that takes a certain amount of dedication to the actual cause that I don't think I have. I'm just a writer and a reporter, and I feel that the environment is something that I live in, and it's important for me and everybody else to preserve in order to not only get resources out of it, but just so we don't, you know, choke and die and poison ourselves. Yeah, just because there's some fringe people that exploit these noble causes for ego boosts or for monetary gain or for all kinds of governmental regulations and shenanigans, that doesn't mean that we can just kind of dismiss the topic and not talk about it. In fact, we become susceptible to those very bad elements that you lump onto anybody that starts talking about the environment. I mean, it's very silly atmosphere out there when you talk to some people, because everybody is very partisan and they bicker along these jingoistic kind of preformed ideas. They form themselves to the contour of an idea about what you're about to say and then react. And I know this is an age-old problem, but I think honestly at this stage we should be beyond it. And one of the ways to get beyond it is to constantly say, hey guys, let's stop doing that really obviously bad thing that we keep on doing. So again, another reason for having a podcast. And hopefully so far you have been enjoying it. I am now at the 18-minute mark, and I promised you I'd give you 20 minutes. So there's 2 more minutes here, in which I'll talk about the actual length of the podcast, because the next one is going to come out on Friday in the afternoon, and I'm going to be better prepared for it. Much better prepared for it, and it's going to be an hour in length. Next week, I'm hoping to at least have one guest of some sort. It might not be the most professional of people, but hey, it'll be a guest, and we will have a great conversation. I have a musician friend in mind. So that's about it. If there's any kind of change in the upload schedule, I'll post it and I'll let y'all know, but it won't be any more than a day's delay. As far as I can tell, you know, life can get crazy, but at this point, I'm pretty committed to doing solid Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thanks so much for joining me here on this first real edition of Audit, the official podcast of the Fractal Journal. My name is Alex Weir, and you can find the Fractal Journal at https://fractaljournal.com. Have a great time wherever time finds you, and goodbye.